Michigan against Iowa. Well, Michigan against the Big Ten. Michigan against the world. I think that's how this guy likes it. That's what I believe. That's what I've seen. That's what I know. All right, it's the Big Ten championship game. Iowa, Michigan. It looks like a mismatch on the field. We will talk all perspectives here with Steve Deace, Michigan podcast in the Bigger Ten. If you're not aware, and you should be, just one of the great sources of Michigan football coverage, perspective, insight, and the Big Ten as well. Steve, how you doing today?
I'm good, and please allow me to apologize to both you and your audience for yesterday. I logged on here at 5 o'clock. I'm like, where is everybody? And then I realized it was Eastern time, and I lived in the Central time zone. So my mistake. I saw you promoted it and everything. I'm truly sorry. I apologize.
We have all done it, but I appreciate that. I opened it up with what this kind of encapsulates at this point. And I know that you embrace that, and that's what it is. Anyone who's not wearing maize and blue is going to be rooting for Iowa.
I'm okay. I mean, I wouldn't have it any other way. I mean, I like being the outsider. I went to 11 different schools, K through 12. My first favorite team were the old Oakland Raiders. And I mean, I was 7 years old, and I'm watching Jim Plunkett in a single bar, face mask, win a Super Bowl, very first NFL game I ever remember watching. And he's fat. He's got acne. And I'm thinking, I could grow up and be like him one day. That looked like somebody I could become. Okay. And I mean, I've been the new kid in school a lot. In my day job, I'm the outsider a lot. I'm much more comfortable here than I am being accepted and praised. That's what makes me uncomfortable. So I know in this era we live in, where validation is the number one source of self-actualization. But I like Michigan versus everybody. I love it, in fact.
Now, if somebody like me would have been in your life at the time and would have said, Steve, realize this guy won a Heisman Trophy and was a number one pick. He's not exactly the ultimate underdog here.
Right. But I was 7. I didn't know what a Heisman Trophy was. I hear you. Yes. Yeah.
I always thought when I think of Jim Plunkett, I always thought it was kind of odd, his throwing motion. It looked like he was throwing a spear.
Yep.
Was the throwing
I've got a collection of throwbacks, and one of them is Jimmy Plunkett's Super Bowl 15 throwback jersey. So yes. Yeah.
That is phenomenal. When it comes to this situation, before we get to the game, the playoff implications across the country are maybe better and more complicated than they've been, maybe for the entire playoff era, because we've got legitimately 7 or 8 teams that have some semblance of a shot. Mm-hmm. So we'll go outside of the Big Ten because Michigan's in, or we can certainly delve into what happens if they lose. Who do you think are the 4 best teams in the country? Because that's what the committee is supposed to be selecting. Like anybody really knows that. That's what they're supposed to determine.
I think it's really hard this year, man. It feels like something is wrong, that the most consequential non-conference game of the year, Texas and Alabama, and each of those teams only has 1 loss. Let me put it to you this way. If Alabama played Citadel that weekend instead, where would they be ranked right now, Mark? If they were 12-0, they had played Citadel instead, where would they be ranked?
2.
Yeah. So we're essentially penalizing Alabama for playing that game. This is why I said the last 2 years when we got rid of everybody with a pulse on our non-conference schedule, I said, I don't have a problem with it at all. You get no credit for this. No one's telling you, hey, 2019, we played the toughest schedule in college football with 9-4, and half the fan base wanted Jim Harbaugh fired. No one gives you credit for it. Now, if you want to add a strength of schedule component, they haven't told us what the new measuring stick will be for the 12-team playoff yet. I think a lot of teams are anticipating strength of schedule is going to be a part of it, because you're seeing a lot now of a lot of schools really up the ante in terms of their non-conference competition over the next few years. But we don't know that officially yet. And so until they officially say that's going to be a part of it, I have no idea why you would play a lot of these games. You gain nothing for it whatsoever. Alabama's learning that right now, and I hate to make it look like poor boy Alabama. They don't need it. They once made the playoff without a single top 25 win, and then they went and won the damn thing. Okay, but if you're Texas, you're like, okay, I go 12-1 and win a major conference. My only loss was on the last play to a team that's 10-2 and ranked in the top 12. And I go down to Alabama and win by double digits, and Oregon with a strength of schedule of 60 something gets in over me. I don't understand that. It's a tough year. It is. I cannot foresee a Florida State. I mean, Oregon's strength of schedule is worse than any of these other teams, but in terms of the eye test, I believe it is them and Michigan and Ohio State are the only three teams that are top 10 in offensive and defensive efficiency. When you look at Florida State, there's no way a 13-0 Power 5 conference champion is not getting in. But they weren't a top 4 team in the power ratings, in the Vegas power ratings before Jordan Travis got hurt. They were like 8th or 9th, So are they one of the 4 best teams? No. But they're 13-0 and a Power 5 conference champion, and they'd be setting a terrible precedent. So they're going to be in. I think if you're the committee right now, you are hoping the 4 12-0 teams win. And it's an early night. See you tomorrow morning on ESPN. Roll this puppy out. It's pretty clean cut. We're all good to go. And see you next year with the 12-team playoff. But any of those teams lose, and we're going to have one of the mother of all evaluation periods. We don't even have a tiebreaker like, well, it's Ohio State and people want to watch them over Baylor and TCU. We're talking teams with massive fan bases, massive cachet, ultimate blue bloods in many cases. I don't envy this committee really at all. I think they're going to really be sweating this thing out on this weekend with these games.
At the core of this debate seems to be Oregon, Texas, and Bama. And for some reason, Bama and Texas are the comparison point. That's for obvious reasons they played, but that Oregon seems to be, and we assume the championship game win, that if they win the Pac-12, they're in, and there has to be some decision made over Texas and Bama. I don't understand why the 3 can't be compared. And if you need to take the slot is 1, 2, or 3, then that's what you do. But you compare all 3 of those teams.
I agree. But let me give you a scenario. All right. Alabama beats Georgia. They're both 12-1. Washington beats Oregon 13-0. Michigan wins 13-0. Florida State wins 13-0. Texas wins 12-1, beat Alabama, who beat Georgia. Who's getting in? I think we recognize Washington and Michigan are in at 13-0 as conference champions, right? Okay. Who's getting those other 2 spots?
Florida State has to be selected. They just have to be selected.
Okay.
And I know that there's a component about injury, and we've seen their backup quarterback once, and they flailed against.
All right, that's a good point. Let me clarify. Florida State wins, but it's like 17-14. You know what I'm saying? He didn't go out in Cardale Jones, Wisconsin. Okay, it's like 17-14, 2017. Okay, and they win. What happens?
You can't deny an undefeated team.
I tend to agree. That means we're now talking about Alabama and Georgia at 12-1, and Texas beat Alabama at 12-1. We're only talking about one of those teams getting in. Only one of them. It's a very plausible scenario, brother.
Oh, it is very plausible, and I think that most people are most comfortable with Texas just because of the head-to-head win.
Yeah, shouldn't the season matter? Yeah. So we're not going to have any SEC teams. We have 2 12-1 SEC teams, including the 2-time defending national champ, and not going to have, oh my. The best thing for that committee is just those 4 undefeated teams win.
I believe the 4 best teams are Michigan, Ohio State, Alabama, and Georgia in some order. That's who I think are the 4 best teams in the country. But I'm all into, first of all, getting back to the original point about scheduling, that's the crux of this whole issue. That's at least at the core, is that there needs to be parameters given to a committee to comprise the non-conference schedule for every team in the country. and take it out of
I
the
just think
school's hands.
there needs to be some form of an RPI, like what college basketball has had for a long time, which is a measure of your opponents and your opponents' opponents. And going in what that formula is, and you need to schedule. And now we have the quad system, so it's even more specified. You want to make sure you do not schedule a lot of games outside of that, outside of the top 100, because if you lose one of those games, you basically have to win 2 quad 1 games to make up for what that quad 2 loss will do. And so you're welcome to schedule however you want, but know going in how this thing is determined by the selection committee. We have nothing like that. This has never been a playoff. I've told you that from the beginning, Mark. It's an invitational. All right. There's no objective criteria for making this. Now, next year, we're going to get a playoff. There is an objective criteria. You win your conference and you're one of the, well, they're saying 6, but it's going to be 5 when they get done with it. You're one of the 5 highest ranked conference champions. You automatically get in. So I would argue the college football playoffs first year is actually next year. What we've had here for the last decade is an invitational. There was no objective standard for getting in. I would have said the one objective standard was be coached by Nick Saban and have 1 loss or less, and you'll get in. But now we're sitting here saying we're not even sure that'll hold this year. Okay. So there's no objective standard for getting in whatsoever. That's an invitational. That's not a playoff.
Well, I'll put it this way, Steve. I think there are objective criteria and standards. They're just used in different scenarios to different measures. They're used at whatever point that they want to use them. They've got a list of them, and they just grab whichever ones apply to what they want.
We've seen that for sure. Yeah. And they reverse engineer things. They set things up in advance. The problem is this year, there are so many talented, big name, blue blood programs with 1 loss or less. It was impossible to do that. Absolutely impossible. So what they really need now, they just need to organically let the process play itself out. And they need those 4 undefeated teams to win. If that does not happen, and chances are it won't, that's just not the way that, life works in college football. But if unless those 4 undefeated teams win, we're going to have, at least as big of an argument as we had. I mean, everybody remembers Alabama got in one year without beating a top 25 team. No one remembers the teams that they got in over, though, because it wasn't like that big of a debate. That's why they got in. The one major debate we've had this entire time, even the year Ohio State got in 2018 with 1 loss, or did not get in, won the Big Ten with 1 loss, no one really complained about what the rest of that field looked like. Well, you might have, because you're a Buckeye too. But the one year that everybody agrees there was a real argument was the very first year with Ohio State, TCU, and Baylor, okay? At the very least, if one of those undefeated teams loses, we are looking at an argument at least as big as that one. And maybe more so because TCU and Baylor don't have the clout that names like Florida State, Ohio State, Alabama, Texas have, even Oregon, for that matter. They're a major TV draw as well.
I don't understand why 2018 was not a debate. Oklahoma 12-1 conference champion, Ohio State 12-1 conference champion. Ohio State had better wins. Yes, they had the egregious loss, but there should have been more of a debate there.
Agreed. That was kind of like the make good, though, for putting in 2014. I honestly think that's what happened.
Our guy Biggs Mike's stepping up with a 5 spot. Appreciate that. Not everyone is rooting for Iowa. Ohio State needs Michigan to win. They split. They will not put Ohio State in over Michigan. I want to hear you say it, Mark. So I have processed
I think
that.
Ohio State needs Michigan to win.
They do.
And needs Michigan and Georgia to win, and needs Texas and Florida State to both lose. That's what I believe.
What if Michigan loses? Iowa's 12-1, or I'm sorry, they're 11-2.
I don't believe there'll be a Big Ten team in the playoff if Michigan lost.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
I think here's why everyone needs to be rooting for Michigan Saturday, and I mean everyone. You want to see Tony Petitti on that stage handing a championship trophy to Jim Harbaugh in one of the most cringe photo ops in the entire history of college football. That's why. You want to see, and if you know Jim at all, Jimmy will be like completely oblivious to it, like not even care. He'll like shake his hand, grab the trophy, and then give it to Sharon Moore. That's the beauty of it, is Jim won't give a rip at all, won't care at all. Okay, and so that'll appear to be like it was an alpha mood. No, Jim just doesn't give a bleep, doesn't care. Jim is impervious to cringe. He does not care. All right. He's at home there, actually. He'll just grab the trophy, shake his hand. Thanks, Commish. Here's Sharon Moore. We're great. Yeah. It's Tony Patini who's going to be sitting there, all right, with his toes curled the other way around.
Yes, he's had to prepare for this now for about 4 or 5 days.
Yep.
Leading into this.
And he did his damnedest to make sure he wouldn't have to do it, but it didn't work out for him, nevertheless. Yes.
So if Iowa wins, okay, so you have no path for Iowa to make the playoff whatsoever.
This is the biggest point spread in the history of Power 5 conference championship games.
Well, I know they're not going to win the game, but they're still playing football on Saturday night. Iowa wins. They beat Michigan. Florida State loses. Texas loses. We can't find a path for them.
No, I think if we get down to that, you have the Georgia-Alabama winner, the Washington-Oregon winner. Okay. I don't see Iowa leapfrogging all those teams with 2 losses. I think at that point, maybe your boys get in at that point with that kind of carnage.
But they can't trump the Michigan record with a loss.
That's true. Michigan would then say we have the same record, but we beat them. Yeah. Yeah. So the more I think about it, I think that it's a very thin, very narrow road for Ohio State to make it.
What is your thoughts about the Iowa football program, both on Saturday night in trying to find a path to victory? We'll start there. So we'll focus on Saturday night first about Iowa's path to a victory.
The problem that Iowa has, and I said this when we played them 2 years ago in this spot, it's really hard to pull upsets. And we ran into this the very next game when we played Georgia in the Orange Bowl. It's hard when there's a talent gap and you play the same style. It's very hard to offset that. Okay. And Iowa, I like Kirk Ferentz. I've known him for many, many years. Okay. I don't believe a single guy starting for Iowa would start for our team. Like none of them. And all the guys that would have competed for starting spots, Eric All, if we still had him, we wouldn't have taken Barner. He'd be starting for us. Cooper DeJean, goodness, could you imagine a Will Johnson, Cooper DeJean corner combo? I can. Okay. And then I can imagine we're like a Bears 46 defense every week because no one's, we're covering everybody man to man. All right. He would start for us. Most of the guys they have that would compete for time on our team as a starter are not going to play. They're injured, and so there's a massive talent gap here. And the difference is, like when we lost to Appalachian State, the zone read offense was still relatively new in college football. Didn't really see a lot of it in the Big Ten. I don't remember Michigan playing a team running that offense ever until we played Appalachian State, actually. And that's a team that had a very prolific offense. Remember, several guys on that team played in the NFL. And so that's where you run into, usually when you get these kinds of upsets, one of 2 things happens. The team that was upset had an injury at quarterback, or was early in the year and the new starting quarterback was sloppy, or it was the first game of the year and we don't have preseason games and special teams were really bad. Okay. Well, that doesn't apply here. The other scenario where it happens is the other team has a terrific offense, and it's like college basketball. You caught them on a night when they make 15 threes and there was nothing you could do, and Iowa's not that kind of a team. This isn't Hayden Fry running out there with, Tavian Banks, Ronnie Harmon, Chuck Long, and exotics, and you've got to score 30 points to beat them, which in 1985 was a lot of points for a Big Ten football game. Okay. That's not what this team is. Iowa wants to play in a phone booth. So do we. Iowa wants to win at the line of scrimmage. So do we. Iowa wants to play an efficient physical game of complementary football. So do we. I mean, our formations are going to look similar, and so I think it's just a really difficult path for them. I do worry about a bit of a letdown factor, which seems odd in a championship game, but I think that's offset by Jimmy's return. I think that will be a big emotional boost having him back, and I just think there's a reason, and these are all the reasons why this is the biggest spread in the history of conference championship games.
Yeah, 2 years ago, I was concerned about that on Michigan's behalf, having slayed the giant. That was such a massive win, and then turning around 7 days later, but it was not an issue. And your punter, Tommy Doman, with the focus of the team being offense, defense, and the great quarterback play and everything that you've got, I have lost sight of how good he was until the last couple of weeks, and pinning where Torrey Taylor gets all these accolades and everything, because that is a main integral part of their team. Well, Doman's
nothing against Torrey Taylor. He's the best punter I've ever seen in the Big Ten. But Tommy Doman won the Maryland game, dude.
Yeah.
I mean, him pinning them down inside the 5-yard line a couple times there in the second half won that game. Yeah.
Absolutely. So for Iowa football, Steve, going forward, is there a way for them to stay competitive? You know, they have just been so good at saying, this is our competition in the Western Division.
Mm-hmm.
We'll worry about the postseason at the end, but this is what we do, and we'll do it better than anyone else. But in this new Big Ten, what is their best route of staying competitive? Is it this?
I think that the second to middle tier of Big Ten programs, I think, are in for a difficult stretch now, moving into where the league is about to go. No divisions, and you're adding UCLA, Oregon, Washington, and USC. To even get to the Big Ten championship game, you need, out of these teams, Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, USC, UCLA, Oregon, and Washington. You need 6 of those 7 teams I just mentioned to not have top 10 teams in the same year. That's just to be one of the 2 teams in the Big Ten championship game. One of them. I went back and looked, going back to the beginning of the college football playoff era. I could only find 2 seasons where that occurred. But keep in mind, that's not actually relevant here, because they were playing different schedules then. Now they're going to all be playing each other. Okay. So if you're Iowa, you're Michigan State, these are teams that have had a lot of success in this era. You know, Wisconsin, just to get to the Big Ten championship game, you need 6 of those 7 teams to essentially not be top 10 teams in the same year. I don't know that we'll ever see that. And then that then assumes you're then going to be better than the other teams in your tier. That you're now also going to be better than Michigan State, Wisconsin, Iowa, et al. Okay, I'm not sure how many times we're going to see any of those teams in Big Ten championship games. I am sure it will happen. Okay, I'm sure it will, but it's going to be rare. We're not going to see what we saw when Hayden got to Iowa. He kind of broke the Michigan, Ohio State hegemony, and we had 5 different Big Ten teams go to the Rose Bowl in the 80s. I don't think we're going to. If you see 5 Big Ten teams go to the Rose Bowl or represent win the Big Ten is really what that symbolizes, then we're really just saying that 5 of the 7 teams I just mentioned kind of rotated. All right. I just think it's going to be really, really difficult for those teams. And then and then they're not going to have the benefit of playing that West Division schedule every year. So, I suspect, a lot of these bowl games don't mean much right now. And I mean, I think they're going to feel like the NIT. Yeah, I don't know what 7-5 and 8-4 in a college football season will matter in the era moving forward. I don't, and I think it'll be fascinating to see how those schools navigate that and what they do to try to break through despite that.
We did this here live when the schedule was released for the Big Ten in 2024 and beyond. And it's a good exercise to go through if you want to see the stark contrast. Go through every team, take the current formula, and therefore, let's say a 2023 schedule, and then replace the difference, where in Iowa will play 6 Western Division teams currently. They'll play only 3 or 4, and those are supplanted by maybe an extra Eastern Division team, or 2 or 3, usually 2 is pretty much the standard of what everyone is going to face from the incoming teams from the Pac-12. And it's just a significant upgrade.
Agreed. I mean, I don't know that I'm sure it will happen, but I don't know that most years we're going to even have an undefeated team in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
Next year at this time, we're going to be talking about which 9-3 teams get into the college football playoff. When you look at the depth that is going to exist in the Big Ten and the SEC, and then you look at the parity that's going to exist in the Big 12, we're going to be sitting here a year from now talking about which 9-3 teams are going to be in the college football playoff. I don't think people truly understand how much different things are going to be at this time next year. Dramatically different. Dramatically.
David Braun did an exceptional job at Northwestern.
Best single season coaching job I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Incredible. Never been a head coach before. That was already the consensus last place team in the league. It was 1-11 last year. The players didn't want to come to Big Ten media days. They had 4 guys go in the transfer portal that were starters right away. Had to play his backup quarterback most of the year. It's incredible what he did there. No question about it. Best single season coaching job in the Big Ten I've ever seen.
Before we get to the super chat, I wanted to lead from that into, was there anything else that surprised you from this current Big Ten season?
Not really. I mean, I go back to my preseason power ratings, Mark, and they pretty much played out. I had Michigan on a neutral field 1.5 better than Ohio State. And I had Michigan and Ohio State each about on a neutral field, about a touchdown better than Penn State. And then I had Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State 2 touchdowns favorites on a neutral field over every other team they played. Well, that's pretty much the season we had. I predicted Iowa to win the West. Now, I thought it was going to be because Cade McNamara gave them a legitimate, competent offense, but not really. I mean, the Big Ten standings look really similar to what my projected Big Ten standings were back in July when I released my preview.
Yeah, I'm going to continue, despite the 4 teams entering from the Pac-12, I'm going to continue to track the number of how many games we have to go through before we're going to see an existing Big Ten team other than Ohio State, Michigan, or Penn State defeat one of those 3 teams. Mm-hmm. We're at about 45 straight, something in that range.
Yeah. The big story this offseason, Mark, there are three potential big stories. Does Ryan Day look at an NFL job? Does Jim Harbaugh look at an NFL job? Those are the first 2. And the other that no one's talking about is, what are the league's tiebreaker procedures going to be? That's a massive story moving forward. What does that look like? I'll tell you what I would do. Head-to-head is number 1, although I don't know how often that's going to come into play with 18 teams. At that point, I would just let the college football playoff rankings determine it. And just I don't want coin flips or, we scored this many. I don't want 75 tiebreakers. Head to head, if you beat the other team or teams you're tied with, that's you. Otherwise, the top 2 ranked, because all this is about the college football playoff anyway. That's why we're not doing divisions, right? Get the 2 best teams up there. So at that point, then if the head to head doesn't apply, then the top 2 teams in the college football playoff rankings, among those that are in first place in the league, they play for the championship every year. That's what I would do. Make it very streamlined and simple. Bam, that's it.
Well, what it's currently established to be, as we've discussed, is completely ridiculous. Had Penn State found a way to beat Michigan, then we would have been determining who played the 3 best teams in the West, and there was really no 3 best teams in the West.
Minnesota, Wisconsin would have mattered every bit as much as a game for the Big Ten championship as Michigan, Ohio State did. What a stupid system that is. Yes, I agree.
Yes. Your 3 teams went 13-14. My 3 teams went 12-15. That really shows.
That's just a stupid system. I agree. Yeah.
We've got a super chat here. Jess, we appreciate you. Cade McNamara said in an interview he is helping Iowa prepare for Michigan. He knows the ins and outs at Michigan. Do you think it'll have an effect on the game?
Well, let's see. I think Michigan's going to probably try to run over you. That's the scouting report. And then when they think they've established that, they're going to throw a play action pass either to Roman Wilson or to the tight ends. So I just saved Cade McNamara some time. And he can tell Iowa Michigan's defense is really fast. So there you go.
Steve,
Mark, that Michigan football program, they are known for their complexities of ingenuity, right? They're known for that. Okay. I mean, the Michigan offense is literally called run across the mother effer's face. That's what the Michigan offense is freaking called. Okay. What the hell is he talking about? He's going to help. There's nothing to help. I mean, it's pretty obvious what Michigan's going to do. They're going to run the ball and then they're going to try to throw it over your head.
Absolutely, Steve. There's no doubt. However, if you've got Cade McNamara on your roster, are you not at least having a discussion more about probably personnel? What does he tend to do? What are his weaknesses? Can
also
we gain
remember, though, he played for a different offensive coordinator.
Give me something on Will Johnson, Mike Sanderstill. Can we gain any kind of advantage on those guys? Something.
Mike Sanderstill is really good.
Yeah, I know he is.
Yeah. That's the scouting report. Yeah.
I have not seen a pair of cornerbacks play the ball consistently as well as those two have this year, this season. Yeah,
I agree. I mean, I think Sanderstill is a guy that someone's going to draft next April, like 67th in the draft. And he's going to play 10, 15 freaking years and make like a half a dozen Pro Bowls. He's that kind of player. He'll be 5'8.5", not 5'11". He'll run a 4.55, not a 4.41. And so he's going to get picked 65th instead of 25th. And he's going to last because of everything else he brings to the table. He's going to get a third contract in the NFL if he stays healthy.
Steve, before you go, I'm going to put you in an uncomfortable position.
I love that.
You're in charge at Ohio State. What are you doing?
Define I'm in charge. How?
You're the athletic director.
I'm the athletic director. Okay. I want to find out. First thing I do if I take over is there's going to be 7 to 10 job openings in the NFL, including a franchise that has Ryan Day's former quarterback, and he's got an NFL background. Is I want to find out. I don't want to get blindsided. I'm going to ask him point blank. Do you want one of these positions? I want to look him in the eye and know the answer to that day one. That's the first conversation him and I are going to have. And then the second conversation, then if it's clear that he wants to stay, then I think my job now is to help get him what he needs to be the most successful that he can be. And that starts with, I want, let's go through the last 3 years against Michigan, a total audit of those games. Would we do wrong? Would we do right? Would we do over again? Which do we wish that we would not have done over again? And the reason why I think that's necessary is I just don't think this game, it's going to get lumped into the other two. It's not like the other two. This game is pretty much what Michigan, Ohio State was most of our lives. Most of our lives, it wasn't Tim Biakabatuka running for 300 yards or Troy Smith winning a Heisman, man. It was a couple teams just sitting there punching each other in the freaking balls. And then the last one that stammers and makes a mistake, the other team wins. Okay. That's two evenly matched teams, two of the best programs in the country. This game was totally different than the other two. Totally. Ohio State played extremely well in the game. And in the end, just Michigan made one more play, And so that's the other thing too about overreacting. If it was 3 years in a row and Michigan runs for over 200 on us, 3 years in a row, clearly in the second half, they pull away. I'm much more concerned if I'm your AD. That's why my first question is, do you want to stay? What do you want?
We got you, Steve. Okay. No, great points there because Ohio State's this close to the ceiling, but the fall is exponential. I'm not saying things are perfect, but when it's about 95% right, you don't want to do. Unfortunately, we can't hear you now. We can't hear you, Steve. All right. If you need to go, thanks. We appreciate it. Steve Deace, Michigan podcast. I believe you're aware. Great work there. And he's got a really good guest almost every week on Tuesdays. Just a tremendous source of football knowledge that he brings on every Tuesday. Yeah. All right. Appreciate y'all being here. A little special edition Iowa and at Michigan live here at the Voice of College Football. Boy, we've had a big day today. Big 12 championship preview at 2 p.m. Eastern time. So run back and catch that on the main channel. We did Ohio State live today at 11 a.m. Some really good points made by Steve, Kevin, and Tony concerning the Buckeyes and what they need to do going forward, and analysis of the Michigan game. So check that out on the Ohio State channel. So you're on the Iowa channel or the Michigan channel. We've got a Florida State live show coming up at 6 p.m. Eastern time. We've got Miami at 7 Eastern time. And so please check out those channels. And folks, we've got a Big 12 channel and we've got an SEC channel. You can get those links in the description section. So if you like the Big 12, if you like the SEC, obviously get on over there, folks, and check out those channels. Even if you don't, but you enjoy what we're doing here overall at the Voice of College Football, I would ask that you would understand that it's all necessary to keep it all going. So SEC channel, Big 12 channel, get us to 1,000 subs right there. I just posted on the main channel, just seconds before we came on with Steve, I posted a Big 10 championship game comp between Michigan and Iowa. Michigan fans, don't chuckle. I posted that comp between Iowa and Michigan. By the numbers, Big 10 championship preview. Check it out. We are going to continue to just be all over these conference championship games. Somebody had requested me to run down college football playoff scenarios per team. I will do the best I can to get to that. I am stacked up with a ton of things that I need to get to. There's also 2 audio podcasts that I do each week that most of you are unaware of that are on other platforms that I have to knock out every Thursday as well, right here at the Voice of College Football. See you at 6 p.m. Eastern time, Florida State Live ACC Championship Game Preview. You go to games all the time, or you've got your heart set on that one huge matchup, go to ticketsmarter.com to save big. TicketSmarter technology gives you the best competitive prices on the secondary market. Your purchase price is safe and guaranteed. Use promo code BIG, B-I-G, to get $10 off of any purchase of at least $100, or the promo code BIG20, BIG20, to get $20 off of any purchase of at least $300. Use the promo code as many times as you'd like. There is no limit. Get in the game with ticketsmarter.com or the TicketSmarter mobile app. Think smarter, Ticket Smarter.